You've cried, you've prayed, you've tried everything you could, but nothing seems to move. You've given your all, yet the mountain still stands tall. Have you ever reached that place where your strength runs out and all you can do is lift your hands and say, God, I've done all I can. There comes a time in life when your effort reaches its limit. When your strength is spent, your tears have dried up, and your plans have fallen apart. You've pushed, you've fought, you've worked, you've waited, and still the doors didn't open. Hear me today. That's not the end of your story. That's the moment God steps in. You see, when you come to the end of yourself, you come to the beginning of God's power. The problem is not that God is late. The problem is that we often try to do what only He can do. We try to fix it, control it, explain it, force it. And all the while, heaven is waiting for us to let go and let Him handle the rest. Some of you are carrying battles you were never meant to fight. Some of you are trying to solve problems you were only meant to pray about. You've done your part. Now it's time to let God do His. So today I came to remind somebody in this room, somebody watching, somebody struggling, that when you've done all you can, you're not defeated. You're positioned. Because that's the place where divine strength begins. You can do all you can. You can plan, you can push, you can pray, and you can pour every ounce of strength you've got into what you're believing for. Hear me, there will always come a moment when your human effort reaches its limit. You'll come to a wall that won't move no matter how hard you push, door that won't open no matter how much you knock, a situation that refuses to shift even after all your prayers and tears. And that's not because you failed. That's not because you're weak. It's because your effort was never designed to do what only God can do. Your job is obedience. God's job is outcome. We live in a world that teaches us to fix everything ourselves. When something breaks, we try to repair it. When something stops working, we search for answers. We strategize, we hustle, we grind, we work until our hands are tired and our hearts are heavy. No matter how strong you are, there will come a point when your own strength simply isn't enough. And in that moment, God isn't punishing you. He's positioning you. He's showing you that your limitation is the very doorway through which His power enters. It's easy to trust God when everything is moving smoothly. It's easy to say God is good when the doors are opening and the answers are clear. Can you still trust Him when the doors are locked, when your prayers seem unanswered, when your best effort doesn't change the outcome? That's when faith becomes real, because faith doesn't grow in comfort. Faith grows in limitation. When you've done all you can, situation still looks the same. That's when faith whispers, now it's His turn. You see, your strength runs out for a reason. If you could fix everything by yourself, you wouldn't need divine help. If you could make every door open on your own, you'd never experience what it feels like to be carried by grace. God allows your strength to deplete so that you can experience His. He allows your plans to fail so that you can see that His plan was always greater. Sometimes He'll even let you run out of options, not to hurt you, but to help you. Because as long as you think you can do it all alone, you'll never know what it means to truly depend on Him. Some of you have been trying so hard to hold everything together, your family, your finances, your dreams, your peace of mind, and you're exhausted. Challenge you to love another. If you've done everything you know to do and still things aren't changing, that's not the moment to give up. That's the moment to lift your hands and surrender. That's the moment to say, God, I've done all I can. I've fought with all my might. Now I need You to take over, because that's where miracles begin. God steps in where human strength steps out. You might not realize it. Your limitations are not failures, they're invitations. Every time you hit a wall, heaven is saying, let me show you what I can do. Every time you come to the end of your effort, God says, now you're in my territory, because your effort can move small things, but God's power can move mountains. Your strength can handle the temporary. God's strength secures the eternal. There's a story in every believer's life where they can look back and say, I did everything I could, God did the rest. Maybe you've been through something like that. A season where you thought it was over. and somehow you made it through. That wasn't your effort, that was grace. That wasn't your strength, that was his hand holding you. And sometimes you don't even see it while you're in it. You only recognize later that it was God who carried you through every step. The challenge is we don't like reaching the end of ourselves. We don't like feeling helpless. We want to control the outcome. We want to know the plan. We want to fix the problem. God doesn't need our control. He needs our trust. He doesn't need our perfection. He needs our surrender. You may have the strength to start. Only God has the power to finish what he began. When you finally stop trying to be the hero of your own story, you give room for the real hero to step in. When you've done all you can, don't let frustration make you forget that God is still working. Just because you can't see movement doesn't mean heaven is silent. The seed still grows underground before it ever breaks the surface. The process is hidden before the promise becomes visible. And maybe that's where you are right now, in that silent stage, that unseen process, where you've done your part and now must wait on his power. It's not easy, but it's sacred. It's the moment where heaven watches to see if you'll trust without proof, if you'll believe without results, if you'll rest even when there's no visible reason to. Because that's what faith really is. It's the bridge between what you've done and what God will do. It's the connection between your human limit and his limitless power. When you've done all you can, that's when you begin to see what only he can do. Open doors you couldn't find. He'll make ways where there were none. He'll turn endings into new beginnings. So stop measuring your faith by your results. Stop questioning your worth because something didn't move when you wanted it to. Your effort is not wasted. Your obedience is never in vain. You've done what you could. Now let God do what you cannot. Let his strength lift what your hands can't hold. Let his timing unfold what your planning couldn't predict. Let his power perfect what your effort could only begin. You've done all you can, and that's enough. Because when your effort ends, grace begins. When your power fades, his power shines. When you finally let go, that's when you'll see that God never needed your strength. He only wanted your trust. Faith begins where control ends. As long as you are in control, faith doesn't have room to work. As long as your hands are on the wheel, God's hands are tied. We say we trust him. The truth is, we often trust him only when things make sense, only when we can see how it's going to work out. But that's not faith. That's comfort. Faith begins when the plan stops making sense. Faith begins when you have no map, no timeline, and no guarantee. Faith begins when your control runs out and all you have left is your belief that God still knows what he's doing. You see, real faith doesn't grow in the light of certainty. It grows in the shadow of uncertainty. When everything is clear, you don't need faith. You can see the outcome. Faith isn't required. Faith comes alive when you're standing in the dark and you still choose to walk forward. That's when heaven looks at you and says, now, that's trust. Faith isn't built when you're in control. It's built when you surrender control. It's when you lift your hands and say, God, I don't know how you're going to do it. I know you will. We live in a generation obsessed with control. We want to manage every detail, predict every outcome, and hold every answer. We think that if we can plan enough, prepare enough, or work hard enough, we can make everything happen on our timeline. God doesn't operate through our control. He operates through our surrender. You can't have faith and control at the same time. You have to choose one. Because faith says, even if I don't see it, I'll still trust it. Colonel says, I'll only believe when I see it. Faith releases, control restricts. Faith opens your heart, control closes your hands. Sometimes God will intentionally place you in situations that are completely beyond your ability to manage. Not because he wants to frustrate you, but because he wants to free you. He wants to teach you that your peace doesn't come from everything being in your control. Your peace comes from knowing that he's in control. The moment you stop trying to hold it all together, you'll feel a freedom you've never known before. Because you'll realize that what you were trying to control was never yours to carry. Think about it. How many sleepless nights have you spent worrying about things you couldn't fix? How many times have you tried to manipulate a situation only to find yourself more anxious and more tired than before? That's because control is exhausting. You're trying to play God in a space you were never meant to. You can't heal every heart. You can't change every outcome. And you can't predict every path. But when you stop trying to be the master of your own universe and start trusting the master of all creation, something shifts inside of you. That's where faith begins. Faith isn't blind, it's brave. It's not pretending that everything is okay. It's believing that everything will be okay because God is still on the throne. Faith says, even when I don't understand, I still believe. It's standing in the middle of uncertainty and saying, God, you are still faithful. It's walking forward when the road disappears beneath your feet. It's letting go of the outcome and saying, God, have your way. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. Not faith in your plan, not faith in your strength, but faith in His sovereignty. You see, control feels safe, but it's a trap. It gives you the illusion of security, but it robs you of peace. You're constantly tense, constantly analyzing, constantly trying to make things go your way. But when you truly surrender, when you say, God, I give it all to you, that's when the burden lifts. That's when you start breathing again. Because surrender isn't giving up, it's giving over. It's saying, God, this belongs to you now. The outcome is in your hands. The timing is yours. The plan is yours. I'm just here to walk by faith. Faith requires you to release what you cannot control. It demands that you trust when you don't have proof. It asks you to believe in a God you can't see, to hold on to promises you haven't yet experienced, to walk through seasons that don't make sense. And that's not weakness, that's strength. Because the strongest thing you can ever do is admit that you can't do it all alone. When you let go of control, you give room for miracles. Some of the greatest blessings you'll ever receive will come in moments when you stop forcing and start trusting. As long as you're trying to make things happen in your own strength, you'll only get human-sized results. But when you surrender to God, you open the door for divine-sized results. He can open doors you can't even see. He can change hearts you thought would never shift. He can turn what you thought was a delay into your greatest breakthrough. Faith is not about figuring it out. It's about following even when you don't understand. Abraham didn't know where he was going when God told him to leave everything behind. Moses didn't know how the Red Sea would part when he raised his staff. They simply obeyed. They let go of control and trusted the voice that led them. That's what faith looks like. It's not confidence in your ability, it's confidence in His word. So stop trying to hold everything in your hands. Stop trying to calculate every outcome. Stop trying to plan every detail of how God should work. He doesn't need your directions, He needs your devotion. The moment you stop trying to manage everything, you'll begin to see that He's been managing it all along. Faith begins where control ends. And the sooner you let go, the sooner you'll realize that you were never really in control anyway. You were always held, always guided, always protected. The only thing that ever stood between you and peace was your need to control. But once you release that, you'll discover a deeper level of trust, quieter confidence, a stillness that says, even when I can't see it, I know He's working. So breathe, let go. Stop fighting for control. You've done your part. You've prayed, you've acted, you've believed. Now let faith take over where your strength stops. Go of the need to understand every move. Let go of the desire to control every outcome. Because when your control ends, that's where faith begins. And that's where God does His best work. You were never meant to be the hero of your own story. That's a truth most of us struggle to accept because deep down, we want to fix everything ourselves. We want to be the one who holds it all together, who solves every problem, who keeps every piece from falling apart. But life has a way of teaching us that no matter how strong, talented, or determined we are, always be moments where our strength fails, where our wisdom runs out, and where our plans crumble. That's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you were never meant to carry that weight alone. We live in a world that glorifies self-reliance. We're told to be strong, to be independent, to handle it, to never show weakness. We grow up believing that needing help is a flaw, that asking for support means we've failed somehow. So we try to be our own savior. We try to rescue ourselves from every storm, climb every mountain on our own, and carry every burden in silence. But the truth is, that kind of strength isn't strength at all. It's pride wearing the mask of control. Real strength isn't found in pretending you can do it all. Real strength is found in admitting that you can't. You can't be the hero because this story was never designed for you to save yourself. Every story has a savior, and it's not you. It's the one who writes the story. You're the character, not the author. You're the vessel, not the source. You're the one who's supposed to follow the path, not the one who creates it. When you keep trying to be the hero, you end up carrying a burden that crushes your joy, drains your peace, and breaks your spirit. But when you step back and say, "This isn't mine to fix," that's when you finally allow divine strength to take over where your human strength stops. Some of you have spent years trying to save people who were never your assignment to save. You've poured yourself into fixing situations that were never yours to control. You've tried to hold together relationships that God was trying to release. You've tried to make people happy who were never meant to be satisfied by you. And every time you do it, you end up empty because you're giving from a well that's running dry. You keep trying to be the solution when all you were ever meant to be was the vessel. You don't have to fix every broken thing. You don't have to have every answer. You don't have to carry the weight of every outcome. There's freedom in realizing that your only job is obedience. You do your part and you leave the results to God. You plant the seed, but you don't make it grow. You build the ark, but you don't control the flood. You step into the fire, but you don't control who stands with you in it. That's how life works when you stop trying to be the hero, when you realize that your role is faithfulness, not control. When you try to be the hero, you set yourself up for disappointment. Because heroes are supposed to fix things, and when you can't fix it, you start to think something's wrong with you. You start to believe you're not enough, not capable, not strong enough. But maybe you were never supposed to fix it in the first place. Maybe that situation was meant to teach you trust. Maybe that burden was meant to push you closer to the one who can actually carry it. Maybe that failure was meant to free you from the illusion that you were ever in control. There's something beautiful about surrender. When you finally stop trying to be the hero, you stop living with the weight of everyone else's expectations. You stop carrying the impossible responsibility of being everything to everyone. You stop living in the pressure of trying to make everything right all the time. Because once you understand that you were never meant to be the rescuer, you begin to rest. You begin to breathe again. You begin to realize that it's okay to not have it all together. It's okay to let things fall apart. It's okay to admit that you don't know what to do next. It's okay to let go of people who don't want to be helped, because your worth isn't measured by how much you fix. It's measured by how much you trust. Your power isn't in being the one who saves. It's in being the one who believes. The moment you realize that, life starts to feel lighter. The pressure fades. The noise quiets. You begin to see that everything doesn't depend on you, and it never did. When you stop trying to be the hero, you allow space for miracles. Because miracles don't happen when we're in control. They happen when we've done all we can and have to step back. As long as you're trying to fix everything, you're standing in the way of what God is trying to do. Sometimes He waits until you let go, until you stop fighting, until you stop trying to force outcomes, because only then can He step in and do what only He can do. Maybe that's why things haven't shifted yet. Maybe it's not that God isn't working. Maybe it's that you haven't stepped aside. Maybe you're holding on so tightly to the role of hero that there's no space for Him to show you He's the real rescuer. He doesn't need your perfection. He needs your permission. He doesn't need your control. He needs your surrender. And the moment you realize that, you'll begin to see His hand move in ways you never could when you were trying to handle it all yourself. You were never meant to carry the whole story. You were meant to live inside it. You were never meant to save the world. You were meant to trust the one who already did. So stop trying to be the hero. Stop trying to make everything right by your strength. Stop blaming yourself for things that were never in your power to fix. You're not the writer of the story. You're the one being written into it. And when you finally accept that, you'll find peace that no achievement could ever give you. When you stop trying to be the hero of your own story, you start seeing the true hero at work. You start noticing how he's been guiding you all along, how he's been carrying you through the storms you thought you survived alone, how he's been rewriting your pain into purpose. You were never meant to carry the weight of saving yourself. That's why it feels so heavy. The story was never meant to center on your strength. It was always meant to reveal his. And the moment you let go of trying to be the hero is the moment you discover that the story was never about what you could do. It was always about what he could do through you. Let go of the timeline and trust God's timing. That's one of the hardest lessons life will ever teach you, because waiting doesn't come naturally to us. We want things when we want them. We want answers now, breakthroughs now, change now. We live in a world that runs on speed, fast results, instant gratification, quick fixes. But God doesn't move according to your schedule. He moves according to his purpose. And when your desire for control collides with his divine timing, frustration begins to grow inside you. You start to wonder if he forgot you, if he's ignoring your prayers, if maybe he's changed his mind. But the truth is, God's delay is never denial. His silence doesn't mean absence. His timing is not late. It's perfect, even when it doesn't feel like it. There's something sacred about waiting. Waiting exposes what's really in your heart. When things don't happen on your timeline, your faith gets tested. That's where you find out if you trust the promise or only the pace. Because sometimes the problem isn't that God's not moving. It's that he's not moving at your speed. You want the blessing before the preparation. You want the destination before the lesson. But God knows that an early blessing can become a burden if you're not ready to carry it. He knows what your spirit can handle and what it can't. So while you're saying, God, I'm ready, he might be saying, not yet. I'm still preparing something bigger than you can see. You see, trusting God's timing means trusting his wisdom. It means believing that he sees what you can't. He's arranging things behind the scenes while you're waiting in silence. It means understanding that sometimes he's not delaying the blessing. He's developing you for it. There are lessons that can only be learned in the wait. There's growth that only happens in stillness. There's strength that's only built through patience. And if you rush the process, you rob yourself of the depth that comes from being molded by time. Think about it. If a seed could talk, it might scream from under the soil, I'm buried, get me out. But what it doesn't realize is that being buried is the beginning of becoming. It's in the dark, hidden place that roots grow deep and foundations get strong. The same is true for you. You may feel buried right now, buried in struggle, in silence, in uncertainty, but you're not buried to die, you're buried to grow. And when the time is right, you'll rise. But only when the time is right, not your right time, his. Sometimes we get so fixated on the calendar that we forget about character. We think success is about reaching the next stage. God is more interested in shaping who you become along the way. You might think the delay is wasted time, but it's actually preparation time. He's building endurance in your spirit. He's teaching you how to rely on him instead of your own understanding. He's aligning the pieces, the people, the opportunities, all in a way that fits his bigger picture. And when everything finally comes together, you'll look back and realize why it had to take so long. You'll realize that if it had happened sooner, you wouldn't have been ready for it. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually protection. You were praying for something that looked good, but God saw something dangerous in it. You wanted a door to open, but he kept it shut because what was behind it wasn't meant for you. You wanted someone to stay. He let them leave because their presence would have pulled you off course. You thought he was saying no, but he was really saying not yet. Or even better, I have something greater. His timing protects you from blessings that would have broken you and opportunities that would have overwhelmed you. Waiting isn't easy. Waiting tests your patience, your faith, and your peace. It's in the waiting room of life that doubt whispers the loudest. You start asking questions. Why hasn't it happened yet? What am I doing wrong? Did I miss my chance? And that's when you have to silence the noise with truth. You have to remind yourself that delay doesn't mean defeat. You have to tell your heart that God hasn't forgotten. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean there isn't any. Just because you don't feel movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. The seed doesn't see the sunlight when it's underground. It's still grow enough and care enough. Trusting God's timing is about resting in the unknown. It's about letting go of the clock and holding on to faith. It's about believing that every moment of silence still has purpose. Maybe the reason you're waiting so long is because what God is preparing for you is taking time to build. Great things are not built overnight. Strong trees don't grow in shallow soil. Diamonds are not formed in comfort. They're created under pressure. The process that feels like a delay is often the very process that defines your destiny. So, if you're in a season of waiting, don't lose heart. Don't let impatience steal your peace. Don't let frustration make you quit. The same God who gave you the promise is the same God who will bring it to pass. You don't have to rush what's meant to unfold in divine timing. When the time is right, no force on earth can stop it. When the time is right, what was closed will open. When the time is right, the opportunity you thought you missed will find its way back to you. The waiting season is not punishment. It's preparation. It's not wasted, it's working. You're being shaped, stretched, and strengthened for what's ahead. Trust the process, even when it's painful. Keep your faith steady, even when nothing seems to move. Keep showing up, keep believing, keep preparing. Because when God moves, He moves suddenly. But before the sudden comes the season of silence. Let go of the timeline. Stop comparing your journey to someone else's. Stop thinking you're behind. You're not behind. You're being aligned. God knows exactly when, where, and how to bring everything together. The delay is not denial. It's divine design. So rest, breathe, and trust. Because when the clock strikes heaven's appointed time, everything that once made you question will make you grateful. You'll understand that the waiting wasn't wasted. It was necessary. And you'll see that God's timing was never late. It was right on time. Waiting is not wasting. That's a truth that only time and faith can teach you. In the moment, waiting feels like being stuck. It feels like standing still while life moves past you. You pray, you hope, you plan. Still nothing seems to change. You look around and see others getting what you've been asking for. You watch people move forward while you're standing in the same place. It's easy to believe that nothing is happening, that maybe God forgot you, that your time has passed. But the truth is, waiting is not wasted time. It's preparation time. It's the space where God builds what can't be seen yet. It's the season where you're being shaped for what you've been praying for. There's something sacred about the seasons of waiting because they reveal who you really are when nothing around you changes. It's easy to have faith when everything is moving in your favor, but it's in the waiting that your faith is tested and refined. Waiting stretches your patience, it exposes your fears, it quiets your pride. It forces you to confront the difference between what you want and what you're ready for. Because many times we think we're ready for something. We're not ready to handle the weight that comes with it. We want the promise, but we don't want the process that prepares us to sustain it. God often does His deepest work in silence. You don't always see Him moving, but that doesn't mean He's not working. Just because the surface looks still doesn't mean there's no activity beneath it. When you plant a seed, nothing seems to happen for a while. Days go by, weeks, and the soil still looks the same, but underneath, something powerful is taking place. Roots are growing, foundations are forming, life is preparing to break through. The waiting season is just like that. You may not see progress, but growth is happening in secret. You're being rooted before you can rise. Sometimes God will hold back what you're asking for because He's protecting you from something you can't yet see. He knows that if He gave you the blessing too early, it might destroy you instead of develop you. There's a strength that only comes through patience, maturity that only grows through delay. Every not yet from God is an invitation to grow deeper in faith. He's not punishing you by making you wait. He's positioning you for something greater. Waiting is not a passive act. It's an active faith. It's the choice to stay planted even when you don't see results. It's continuing to believe even when there's no visible reason to. It's praying when you're tired of praying, serving when it feels unnoticed, and trusting when your heart feels restless. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right things with the right heart while you trust God with the results. It's living with expectation instead of frustration. It's saying, I don't see it yet, but I know it's coming. We often confuse delay with denial. The same. Denial is final, but delay is development. Delay means God is not finished preparing something or someone. It might be that the situation isn't ready, or it might be that you're not ready. Maybe the door hasn't opened yet because what's behind it still needs time to align. Maybe the opportunity hasn't come because it's not time for you to walk through it. Sometimes God delays what you desire to prepare you for what you truly need. Waiting is also where your relationship with God deepens. When you can't rely on results, you learn to rely on His presence. When the answer doesn't come quickly, you start seeking the answer more than the answer itself. You start realizing that peace doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from trusting who's in control. That's what waiting does. It shifts your focus from outcomes to obedience, from timelines to trust. It breaks the habit of trying to control life and teaches you to surrender instead. The hardest part of waiting is not knowing how long it will last. You wake up every day hoping today might be the day the situation turns around. Sometimes the waiting lasts longer than you imagined. And in those moments, the temptation to quit grows stronger. That's why you need to remember that even when nothing is happening on the outside, something is always happening on the inside. God is building endurance, patience, and spiritual maturity. He's teaching you to depend on Him, not on circumstances. Because once you've learned to trust in silence, you'll never fear another season of stillness. Every great story in Scripture had a waiting season. Noah waited for rain. Abraham waited for a son. Joseph waited in a prison before stepping into his purpose. David waited years to become king after being anointed. None of them wasted their waiting. They grew through it. They didn't understand everything at the time, but they trusted that the waiting had meaning. When the promise finally came, they were prepared to carry it with wisdom and strength. The same God who guided them is guiding you. When you're waiting, you're not falling behind. You're being refined. When you're waiting, you're not forgotten. You're being focused. God uses the waiting season to clear out what doesn't belong, to strengthen what's weak, and to align your heart with His will. It's the place where impatience turns into peace and striving turns into surrender. It's where you learn that your worth is not in what happens to you, but in who you're becoming through it. So don't despise the waiting. Don't rush what God is still shaping. Don't assume that because it's taken time, it's not working. Some of the most beautiful things in life take the longest to form. You can't rush growth, and you can't hurry grace. God is preparing for you, will meet you at the exact moment you're ready for it, not a second sooner or later. Waiting is not wasting. It's working. It's molding you, maturing you, and preparing you for what's next. One day when the promise unfolds, you'll look back and realize that the waiting was the very thing that made you strong enough to hold it. You'll see that nothing was wasted. Not the tears, the silence, not the delay. Every second was part of the design. So keep waiting, not with frustration, but with faith. Because when the time is right, what you've been waiting for will arrive, and you'll see that the wait was never empty. It was everything you needed to become who you were meant to be. When God closes a door, it's not rejection, it's direction. It's one of the hardest lessons to understand when you're in the middle of it, because everything in you feels like you've been shut out. You tried, you prayed, you prepared, and then the door slammed in your face. It hurts, it confuses you. It challenges you, wonder if you did something wrong or if maybe you missed your chance. But sometimes That closed door is not God's punishment, it's His protection. Sometimes He closes a door not to take something from you, to keep you from walking into something that isn't meant for you. We often get attached to what we planned, and when it doesn't work out, we call it failure. But what if it's not failure at all? What if it's divine redirection? What if the door that didn't open was actually God's way of steering you towards something better, something safer, something stronger? You see, when we look at life, we only see one side of the picture, the side in front of us. But God sees the whole story. He sees the dangers you can't see, the detours you'd never expect, and the blessings waiting in a direction you never planned to go. Sometimes we get so focused on what we want that we forget to trust the one who knows what's best. We cry over the door that didn't open, not realizing that if we had gone through it, it would have led us somewhere we were never meant to be. Maybe the relationship ended because that person wasn't going where you're going. Maybe the opportunity didn't work out because it would have distracted you from your purpose. Maybe the job you didn't get would have drained your peace and stolen your joy. You call it loss, but God calls it love, because sometimes the greatest mercy He shows is by keeping you from what you thought you wanted. It's hard to let go of what you had your heart set on. Build dreams around doors. We make plans around outcomes. So when God says no, it can feel like your whole world just cracked open. What if that no was never a rejection? What if it was an invitation to trust Him more deeply? Every closed door forces you to look up instead of ahead. It shifts your attention from your own path to God's plan. It's in those moments when you can't move forward, that you begin to realize you're not supposed to move on your own. You're supposed to be led. When one door closes, we often stand there knocking, hoping it will open again. We replay the past. We question our choices. We analyze every detail, trying to understand what went wrong. But there comes a point when you have to stop staring at the door and start trusting the direction. Because God doesn't close one door without preparing another. You may not see it yet, but He's already setting things in motion. The same hand that closed the door is the hand that will open the next one. And when He opens it, it'll be a door you couldn't have found on your own, a door that leads to peace, purpose, and fulfillment you never imagined. Think about Joseph. He was sold by his brothers, falsely accused, thrown into prison, forgotten by the very people he helped. Every stage of his journey looked like another door slammed shut. But every one of those closed doors was leading him closer to the palace. The rejection from his brothers positioned him for a greater purpose. The prison became the pathway to power. What looked like setback after setback was actually God directing every step. Had Joseph not been rejected, he never would have been in the right place for God's plan to unfold. The same is true for you. Every closed door, every disappointment, every delay is part of divine navigation. Sometimes God closes a door because He's about to elevate you, but He can't let you take old things into new spaces. Some doors close to make room for growth. Some doors close to separate you from things that no longer serve your calling. Some doors close because God is preparing something new that requires a new version of you. That's why you can't get bitter when life doesn't go your way. You can't waste energy banging on doors that were never yours to walk through. You have to believe that if God said no, there's a better yes waiting ahead. You might not understand it now. One day you'll look back and thank Him for every door He closed. You'll see how those moments of disappointment protected you from destruction. Realize that every detour was actually the direct route to your destiny. The pain of rejection will fade. The wisdom you gain from it will stay with you forever. God never wastes pain. He never allows a door to close without purpose. Every delay, every denial, every redirection has meaning. Sometimes the reason the door closed is because you've outgrown what's behind it. You've changed. You've matured. You're not who you used to be, and God knows that keeping you in the same place would limit your growth. So He closes the door to force you into new ground, to push you toward new experiences, to pull you closer to your true calling. It may hurt, but it's holy, because the closing is not the end, it's the beginning of something new. And when God finally opens the next door, You'll walk through it with a different kind of confidence. You'll no longer chase what's comfortable. You'll follow what's divine. You'll stop fighting for what's fading and start trusting what's forming. You'll realize that you never lost anything. You were simply redirected towards something greater. So if you're standing before a closed door today, panic. Don't force it open. Don't let fear convince you that you've missed your chance. Step back and remember, God is not rejecting you. He's redirecting you. That door closed because He loves you too much to let you settle for less than what He designed for you. Keep walking in faith. Keep trusting that the path you can't see is still guided by His hand. Because when one door closes, another will open. And when it does, you'll see that the closed door was never meant to stop you. It was meant to save you. God does His best work in impossible situations. That is a truth so profound, yet so often overlooked. When life feels hopeless, when the odds are stacked against you, every door seems closed and every option exhausted, that is precisely the moment God steps in to show His power. Human logic cannot understand it, human effort cannot create it, and human strength cannot achieve it. But God specializes in the impossible. He thrives in situations that look hopeless, where there seems to be no solution, no way forward, no light at the end of the tunnel. It's in those moments when you have done everything you can, His power is most evident. Think about it. If things were easy, if outcomes always aligned with our plans, we would never experience the glory of God. We would never see the miraculous. We would never know that there is a force greater than ourselves working on our behalf. That's why the impossible is necessary. It reveals God's strength, not ours. When you face a situation that seems beyond repair, that's when God shows you that He is bigger than the problem. He uses impossibility to demonstrate His sovereignty, His creativity, His ability to turn nothing into something. Sometimes we get discouraged because we look at the problem and forget who is bigger than the problem. We see the mountain, the obstacle, the rejection, the loss, and we think it's over. God is looking at the same situation and seeing possibilities we cannot see. While you see a closed door, He sees a pathway. While you see defeat, He sees victory. While you see lack, He sees provision. And that is why it's in impossible situations that God's glory shines the brightest. It's when the natural fails that the supernatural arrives. Think of the stories in Scripture. David, a young boy with a sling, faced a giant. Everyone else saw certain death. David saw an opportunity for God's power to be revealed. The Red Sea stood in the way of the Israelites, with Pharaoh's army behind them and nowhere to go. But God parted the waters and created a path through what seemed insurmountable. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, yet walked out unscathed because God's power overruled the impossible. Each of these situations looked hopeless by human standards. That's exactly when God wanted to show that His power does not rely on circumstances, it relies on Him. When you find yourself in impossible circumstances, it is a test of faith. God allows situations that seem beyond your control not to harm you, but to prepare you to see Him at work. He allows the odds to be against you so that when He delivers, there can be no doubt that it was His hand, not yours, that made the difference. Human effort can only take you so far. It can strategize, work hard, and plan. But there are moments when only divine intervention can bring breakthrough. Those are the moments that teach you to trust God, to lean on Him, and to recognize that your strength is limited, but His is infinite. Impossible situations also refine character. They teach patience when you cannot move the mountain on your own. They teach perseverance when the way seems blocked. They teach humility because you recognize that your power alone is not enough. They teach hope because you begin to understand that God is still in control, even when the circumstances look impossible. And when God finally acts, the victory is sweeter because it wasn't achieved by human effort alone. It was achieved by God's power, and that makes the testimony unforgettable. Many times we limit God by our own thinking. We look at our circumstances, we analyze every detail, and we decide what is possible and what is not. But God is never limited by our understanding. What we call impossible, He calls opportunity. What we call hopeless, He calls a chance to show His glory. what we call failure, he calls preparation for triumph. And that's why he often allows the impossible situations to enter our lives, not to punish us, to reveal himself. When you face impossible odds, you must remember that God has a history of doing the unexpected. The situation that seems too big for you is just the right size for him. Problem that seems unsolvable is just the opportunity for God to move in a way you cannot imagine. Your limitations become the canvas for his power. Your weakness becomes the stage for his strength. That is why you never despair when the situation looks impossible, because God specializes in turning impossibilities into testimonies. Impossible situations also teach reliance. You cannot rely on your strength, your intelligence, or your resources. You cannot plan your way through it. You cannot force an outcome. You must trust in God completely. And that kind of trust produces miracles because it aligns your heart with his will. You step back, let go of your need to control, and allow him to work. And when he does, the results are not only effective, they are extraordinary, beyond what you could have ever imagined. So when life places you in a situation that looks hopeless, remember that God is not absent. He is present. He is working. He is orchestrating every detail, even when you cannot see it. The more impossible the situation, the more glorious his victory will be. Every obstacle, every setback, every closed door is an opportunity for God to show that he is bigger, stronger, and more capable than you can comprehend. Do not despair when things look impossible. Do not give up when the odds are against you. Do not quit when every human effort fails. That is exactly the moment God wants you to see his power at work. Impossible situations are not the end of your story. They are the beginning of a testimony. They are the stage upon which God displays his glory. Trust him, lean on him, let him show you that when human effort ends, divine power begins. And when it does, you will look back and see that what seemed impossible was always an opportunity for God's best work. Surrender is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate expression of strength. It is one of the hardest lessons to learn because human nature resists letting go. We are trained to hold on, to control the fight, to make sure everything works out the way we think it should. But the truth is, no matter how hard we try, we cannot orchestrate every outcome. There comes a point in life where the very act of surrendering becomes the most powerful thing we can do. When you surrender, you stop trying to manipulate, to force, to bend circumstances to your will, and you start trusting in a power greater than your own. Surrender is not given up, it is given over. You see, surrender doesn't mean inaction. It doesn't mean laziness or passivity. It means that you have done everything you can do, and now you release the rest into God's hands. It means that you've prayed, you've planned, you've acted, you've worked, and you poured your heart into the effort. But you understand that the outcome is not yours to control. That's where faith comes alive. That's where trust is tested. That's where miracles begin. Surrender allows God to do what only he can do, what you could never do, no matter how hard you try. Surrender is often uncomfortable because it goes against our instinct to control. We want to see results, to have a timeline, to know the end before the beginning. But God doesn't operate on human timelines. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. That means he may delay, redirect, or even deny what we think we need, all because he sees a bigger picture that we cannot see. Surrender requires humility. It requires recognizing that our understanding is limited and that his wisdom is infinite. When you surrender, you create space for God to move. As long as you're clinging tightly to your own plans, your own methods, your own expectations, you are blocking the flow of divine power. But the moment you release your grip, the supernatural enters. God can only work where there is room for him. Surrender opens the door for the miraculous, for the impossible to become possible. It's not about abandoning effort. It's about aligning your effort with his will. You do what you can, and then you let him handle what you cannot. Many people struggle to surrender because they mistake it for weakness. They think surrender means they are failing, that they are powerless, that they are giving up. But true surrender is the opposite of weakness. It is an acknowledgement that your strength is limited, but God's power is limitless. It is the courage to admit that you cannot do it all and the faith to trust that God can. Surrender is strength in its purest form because it requires courage, trust, and humility simultaneously. When you surrender, you also find peace. There is a weight that lifts when you stop trying to control every outcome. Anxiety diminishes because you no longer carry the burden of fixing everything. Stress decreases because you recognize that some things are not yours to handle. Hope increases because you know that what you cannot do, God can. Surrender frees your heart from the constant strain of effort and allows you to rest in the confidence that God is working even when you cannot see it. Surrender teaches patience. When you release control, you also release the demand for immediate results. You learn to wait for God's timing instead of forcing your own. You learn that delays are not denials and that setbacks are not the end. Surrender trains you to trust in the process, to trust in God's plan, and to trust that everything will unfold according to His perfect design. It transforms waiting from frustration into faith, from restlessness into expectancy. The beauty of surrender is that it transforms your relationship with God. When you stop relying solely on your own strength, you begin to rely more fully on His. When you stop trying to orchestrate outcomes, you start to notice His guidance. When you release your own control, you begin to experience His sovereignty. Surrender invites intimacy because it acknowledges dependence, and dependence draws you closer to the one who can never fail. Every great story of faith involves surrender. Abraham surrendered his comfort to follow God to a land he didn't know. Moses surrendered his fear to lead a nation he didn't feel prepared for. David surrendered his pride to face a giant far stronger than he was. Jesus surrendered his will in the garden, showing the ultimate example of trust in God's plan. Surrender is not a new concept. It is the thread that runs through every story of triumph and divine intervention. Surrender also redefines success. Human success is often measured by outcomes, results by achievements. But spiritual success is measured by obedience, by trust, by faithfulness. When you surrender, you may not immediately see the results you hope for, but you are participating in something far greater. You are aligning yourself with God's purpose, positioning yourself for blessings you could never manufacture on your own, and allowing divine power to work through your circumstances. So if you are struggling, if life feels heavy, if you have done all you can, surrender. Stop trying to control what is beyond your hands. Stop forcing what only God can bring. Release the burden and trust the process. Surrender your plans, your fears, your frustrations, your outcomes. Let go. God, take over. Because true freedom, true peace, true power comes not from holding on, it comes from letting go. When you surrender, you make room for God to do what you could never do on your own. And that is where the miraculous begins.